truth,
love,
and the good.
Here we go.
Welcome to the DTPHD Podcast. I'm David Tian, Ph.D, and for over the past 11 years, I've been helping hundreds of thousands of people in over 87 countries attain success, happiness, and fulfillment in life and love. And I used to be a university professor before going into dating coach and life coach now. And I'm joined by my very good friend, Henry CHONG.
Hello.
And I'll allow him to introduce himself.
Well, my name is Henry CHONG. I am the CEO of the Fusang Group. We're a private investment office. But when I'm not doing that, I am here talking with you, David, about life, love, the universe, and many other things besides.
Yes. And we had just finished Unleash the Power Within, led by Tony Robbins.
Yes.
And just shot another podcast, and we're about to pack up, and then we're like, let's do another one.
Yes.
So here we are. And you had a specific topic you wanted to talk about. So please introduce it.
So one thing that I was thinking about during the event was about the difference between a lot of people when they set goals, right? Everyone tells you, okay, not only do you want to have a clear, specific goal, you want to visualize the outcome, right? Visualization, very powerful. All athletes do it. That's what everyone says. And yet there's a lot of behavioral science research to show that fantasizing about having achieved a goal dramatically decreases the motivation you have towards achieving the goal, and also dramatically reduces the likelihood that you'll achieve that goal. And I was wondering about this, like how do you square sort of the academic research with what anecdotally is a very powerful tool? And then what I realized is that a lot of people, and we talked about this in the past, about the difference between goals and processes, and why thinking about and enjoying the process is so important. And I think this is exactly the same for when you visualize your goal. Let me give you an example. Let's say, for example, you want to climb Mount Everest, right? So a lot of people say, okay, I have a specific goal, right? Smart goal, specific, measurable, assignable, realistic, time-bound. I want to climb Mount Everest. I will do it by December 2nd, and I will, all that kind of stuff. And then they say, all right, I'm going to sit here and I'm going to picture me being on top of Mount Everest, right? It's going to be great. And then afterwards, I'm going to come back and I'll have climbed Mount Everest, and it'll be so great, and everyone will give me significance, right? And life will be good. And then they don't go do it, right? And it's exactly what the research shows, that by thinking about having achieved your goal, you just have no more motivation to do it. Yeah. And I think the reason why is that why bother to actually do the goal for real if I can just sit here and dream about what it'd be like to have done the goal? It's a lot easier for me to imagine all the nice things that I imagine will happen as a result of having climbed Everest than actually climbing Everest. And the difference with doing visualizations properly, or affirmations, the way that people like Tony Robbins talks about, the difference between doing the kind of exercises that he brings people through, the visualization exercises, is that what you should be thinking about is the process, not the outcome. So to do it right, for example, I mean, one very powerful thing I found even for myself would be, in this case, if I wanted to climb Mount Everest, for me to sit and say, okay, I am proud, excited, and grateful having climbed Mount Everest. That I had to train for 12 months, and it was hard. And then I went and finally did it. And it took me, 4 days from base camp, and it was hard, and there were snowstorms, but I persevered through all that. And I finally got to the top, and I achieved my goal. And now I'm thinking about how great that feels, because now I'm not thinking about the outcome. I'm thinking about the process. And I'm saying that is going to be a great process. And that provides a very powerful pull anchor to now draw you into the process and to power you through what is, quite frankly, a very, very painful process, each step climbing up that mountain. And likewise, pro athletes, right? When runners visualize running a race, they don't sit there and go, okay, I want to win the gold medal in the 400-meter sprint, and then sit there imagining themselves on the podium, right? That's no use. And like I said, research shows that will have a negative impact. What they do is they visualize, okay, I've trained for months and months, and now it's the day of the race, and I'm there at the Olympics, and I've woken up, and I get ready, and I go to the racetrack, and I imagine how everything is, right? Every last detail, every last step, and then I'm there, and I'm at the starting line, the gun goes off, and I imagine running the perfect race, right? In my mind's eye, I can see exactly me going all the way around the track, running the perfect race, and then I win, and I get the gold medal, right? But what they visualize is the process, not just me standing on the podium, which is what every weekend warrior does.
Yeah.
And that, I think, is the key difference.
Yeah, GSP talks a lot about, well, every great athlete talks a lot about visualization. GSP's written a book, ghostwritten, but mostly his stuff, Way of the Fight, which is an amazing book. And he recently just won the middleweight championship in addition to welterweight, which is pretty cool. And he talked about that in interviews. And one thing that he did early on when he became champion was he realized you couldn't go 5 rounds and not make any mistakes. Yeah. That's just not realistic. So he started to, in his visualizations, imagine mistakes that he would make and how he would recover from each of them. So his visualizations got really, and so that even like in round 3, I will very likely get tired, or he's going to hit me like this, and I'm going to visualize myself recovering. And one of the things he visualized was Bisping, having his, what was the name of Manny Pacquiao's coach? Freddie Roach. Yes. Right. So Freddie Roach saw in Bisping's defense, he was weak on one side of his face. I can't remember which side it was. And that's exactly where GSP hit him in round 3. And they did an elaborate way to trick him into lulling him into opening up on that side. So round 1, we're going to go like this. Then round 2, we're going to see what he does. And then we're going to adjust. Round 3, he will be in our hands. So, and then he also visualized taking his back because they knew Bisping gets up on all 4s instead of in a triangle way. Yeah. And, or whatever they call that, like a 3-point get up. And he's visualizing all of these weaknesses in the opponent that they expect, and then visualizing him getting hurt and how he would recover. Yeah. Yeah, definitely, man. Like, it's the process.
Exactly.
When I was in my teenage years, and a little earlier too, I think around 10, 11 years old, I was a very ardent Christian. I was a very ardent Christian all the way up until like early 30s or late 20s. And one of the things about Christianity, with the kind that I was a part of, like evangelical Reformed Christianity, was that they were very strict in their spiritual disciplines. So in my early teens, I read about spiritual exercises. And I read every single word that C.S. Lewis ever wrote back then, and multiple times. So I was very much into this world of like, so Ignatius Loyola is one of the first people who wrote extensively about visualization exercises. So to be a Jesuit, you had to basically lock yourself in a prayer room, fast for 48 hours. And imagine you are Jesus walking down the Via Dolorosa with people spitting at you, and you imagine the thorns on your head as they're putting the crown on you, and you're getting nailed to the cross, and you go through this exercise. And it's a very powerful thing. I'm not sure if I'm getting it right because it was so many decades ago when I read it, but it's you visualize yourself going through the sacrifice or the arduousness of the sacrifice on the cross. And weirdly, I took that as a performative thing. So like I was enrolled in piano lessons since the age of 5. And my 2 sisters, everyone I knew either did piano, violin, or something like that from like 5 or 6 years old. This is an Asian American experience, Asian Canadian. Yeah. And we had to play a lot of recitals. And I learned many things about performance through those recitals. One of which is don't practice the piece you're going to perform the morning that you perform it, because if you fuck up, all you'll be thinking about is when you get to that bar, don't mess up, then you'll mess up. So lots of little performative things, but one of them was visualization. Whenever, so even as an 8-year-old child, your teacher will tell you to visualize. Yeah. And one of the mistakes I made was early on in my life, visualizing winning. So I get the certificate and everyone claps and I'm holding the certificate. That never helped. Yeah. I always did really poorly whenever I was dreaming about that. And instead, I was like, in Christianity, you don't want to ever visualize being awesome because that would just create pride. And the pride is the greatest sin, the downfall of the devil. So you never want to visualize yourself with a trophy as a Christian. You never want to visualize yourself in heaven as a Christian because that would just make you lazy and you'd be full of yourself. So instead, you visualize doing good acts on a day-to-day basis in hard situations. Like, how do you be nice when you want to be mean? And you visualize that, which is actually, looking back, quite advanced to expect of a 12-year-old child to do. But that's what I was reading in C.S. Lewis and all of this stuff. And I applied that to all of these other performative things like piano, like taekwondo matches and things like this. So I visualized playing on stage and being nervous, and my parents are there, and in 2 levels, like third person, see it from the outside, and then from the inside, there are my fingers. Yeah. Bizarre, because I didn't know about point of view back then. I wasn't playing video games. It was just like, because of these spiritual practices that go back to the 1600s. And what you start to see is, Buddhism also. they'll lock themselves away for days and eat just on water and visualizing the various layers of the heavens and the bodhisattvas upon bodhisattvas upon bodhisattvas. And then they go on trips, they'll take some weird mushroom thing and go on these trips. And when you're an ascetic, like 2,000 years ago, sitting under a tree in a kind of like trance-like state, and you're visualizing these like crazy things, this power of visualization to create something in the here and now goes back like thousands of years. Yeah. So the mistake a lot of people make is they dream about what they'll do when they win the lottery. So like, if I win that Powerball lottery of 50 million, well, how am I going to spend it? Right? They're like, I'm going to buy a boat. I'm going to buy.
Exactly. Or they just say, I really, really, really hope that I will climb Everest. Right? And I sit there and I picture myself being on top of Everest, and I set my intention clearly, and I hope. And I remember, James Cameron, when he was filming Avatar, had these great T-shirts made, and it said, hope is not a strategy, luck is not an option, luck is not a factor, fear is not an option, right? And I think the reason why doing visualizations properly, thinking about the process is so powerful is precisely because it makes you realize that it's a process. You've got to get on, you've got to go step by step. It's a long, arduous journey. Yeah. And sitting and hoping will not get you anywhere. If anything, as you say, right, you will try, you will fail, right? It is about the long, slow climb. And the power of visualizations is it makes you realize that. And it makes you realize that I want this thing, there'll be a lot of work in between, but because I imagine how good it'll feel having done the work, having climbed the mountain, I go and do it. And not only that, but we talked about this in our previous podcast about the 6 human needs, about the need for growth. And I think that the reason why growth, it's a long philosophical discussion about why we as humans need growth, why I think all organisms drive towards, have that need for growth. But that is what's valuable, right? Again, everyone talks about this, but no one really takes it on board. Right? The journey is what is valuable. Yeah. It is about who you become in the process of climbing the mountain, not about being on top of the mountain. That's what no one can ever take away from you. Yeah. That is the feeling of accomplishment. That's the need for growth that you're feeling at a deep and primal level. Yeah. And if you just imagine being on a mountain, feeling your need for significance, you will never have the drive that you need to actually climb the mountain in the first place.
Right. Well, one of the things that I learned from Tony Robbins over the years is that he gets you pretty early on to visualize, to celebrate. He gets you to celebrate as if you already got the thing that you've been working so hard for, or that you would like to work so hard for. And
that's the key, right? The thing you've been working so hard for. Right. Not like, one day you woke up, you got lucky, so celebrate.
Right.
It's like, the thing that win, lose, you've taken a step in that process.
Let's take the average person who's not working hard at all, right? So it's more like the thing that you really want, the $1 million, $1 billion, or whatever it is. And imagine you get it and celebrate. Woo, you celebrate. And he's like, hey, isn't that amazing? You can celebrate right now and experience as if you have. Because his argument is we're after an emotional state. Yes. It's not the piece of paper. So imagine you have that state, induce the state in you and feel it and basically delude yourself into feeling the state. And in fact, it's not a delusion anymore because you are in fact feeling that emotion. Yeah. And then what? So what happens to a lot of people is they think that they want something, money, girls, when what they're really after is something deeper, an emotion. And if you give them the emotion, I wish there was like a pill, you could just give them the emotion when they eat it. And then they're like, whoa. And then you ask them, okay, now that you've got that, what else do you want? And that what else do you want? A lot of people have never asked that question. Yeah. They're just mindlessly chasing money or something that they think will give them the significance that they've been craving. And then they die, having never achieved it. Yeah. And on their deathbed, they probably then at that point like, oh shit, I could have been spending my days doing something else that I really enjoyed. Yeah. Because people don't actually, many people who are striving to make money, like these guys who are nowadays trying to do startups, right? I've met so many, working in a co-working office, you meet a lot of wannabe startup guys who don't really have any idea what they're doing. They just suckered some family member to giving them a few $10,000 or whatever, and then they're just squandering it. And they're doing what's cool and trendy, wearing a hoodie. And I thought that was a joke, like that Gary Vee kept talking about that, but in co-working spaces, you see them so often. And they're just high on the idea that they get to sell their company for something. And they're not actually enjoying the process. They're enjoying the process of pretending like they're doing it. Yeah. And it's just sad because if you could give them that significance, the feeling of significance, which is what they're doing it for. And then say, what would you do? Instead, they might be like, I would just spend all my time playing video games then. Well, great. Then you should have been doing that because you could have been fucking esports, millionaire by now.
Yeah.
I asked myself that too. And every year there are slightly different answers because every year I'm growing. And one of the things I discovered a few years ago was if I had all the money I ever wanted, which I kind of did in terms of if you asked me 10 years ago, I already have that. My goal 10 years ago. And it would have been I would just be reading and talking to really smart people. Gee, where did I used to do that?
Yep.
I used to live on a university campus and that's all I did. Just walk around these libraries with tens of thousands or millions of volumes. And so then I don't want to go back to the universities because of the political situation in them right now, but I kind of have created a lifestyle for myself where I get to talk to really smart people and spend the rest of my time reading and talking to other smart people and producing stuff that I hope contributes to people. And it wasn't about how do I create a better video sales letter or how do I make a better landing page or all of these other business things that people were telling me would get me this goal. But it's because I gave myself the thing that I thought that other business stuff would get me. And then I realized if I already have it, then I wouldn't be doing that. I'd be doing this other thing. Yeah. And that's a step towards self-awareness.
Yeah. But you still spend a lot of time doing things that are hard, that are
they're
work,
not,
right?
But you enjoy it, right?
But you enjoy it because you enjoy the process in its totality.
That's right. Yeah.
A lot of us do things that we don't intrinsically enjoy in the activity in and of itself. Right. We enjoy it because we understand that it is a step on a very, very long road, right? Even though it's hard and painful. And that's exactly why, come back to it, visualizing just an outcome is terrible because I already have the thing I want, the emotional state. Why bother with the hard work? Mm-hmm. What you need to do is to visualize the process. We keep talking about how you need to learn to enjoy the process for that exact reason, precisely because it's hard. And Joseph has this great story that he talks about the runner, about the sprinter, and about how he was coaching this Olympic level sprinter who had formerly been really good. And somehow just had this mental block. Right. He would run, he was a 100-meter sprinter, he'd get 90 meters, and it's he just hit a wall. He just somehow he just couldn't do the last 10 meters. And he was 4 seconds slower than his time. It was atrocious, right? I mean, it's high school level as opposed to being an Olympic level. And so Joe said, okay, no problem, but I'll coach you, but you have to do exactly what I say. Right. The first day he comes up and he moves the finish line 10 meters forward to the 90-meter mark. This guy thinks it's really dumb, but he's like, no, you
promised. He moves it back to 1:0. It's longer now.
Oh yeah, right. And he just keeps getting this guy to keep going and going, and his times get worse and worse because it's longer and longer. He's more and more tired. But every single time, importantly, that he finishes the race, he has to celebrate, go absolutely crazy as though he's won the Olympic gold medal, right? And by the end of it, I mean, it's just obviously he's exhausted, he has no more energy, and then he moves it back to the 100-meter mark, and he outperforms all of his times, right? And again, just in a sense, forcing him to enjoy the process. No matter objectively what looks like, he says, look, I'm so terrible. Doesn't matter. I'm being forced to just run as hard as I can and enjoy, right? Yeah. And then when it actually gets moved back to where it normally is, he performs. Because quite frankly, I mean, it's not like his muscles suddenly atrophied so much he couldn't run. It's just that he had, in a sense, performance anxiety. He was so focused on the outcome that he was not focused on the goal. He was on the process. Right?
And in a kind of Bannister limiting belief for himself that he couldn't crack that
outcome dependency is a big thing, right? Again, in psychological research.
So I just thought of when you're saying that, oh man, I just realized that when I got the self-awareness around the fact that I really love the reading and research and putting the research out there, that there was no end goal to visualize. There's no end to it, right? Yeah. There's not any trophy or anything at the end of it, and there's no championship or anything. It's just the process. That was purely and then it's purely intrinsic enjoyment of the process. Yeah. And then I remembered McGregor, Conor McGregor. I don't know if you love him or hate him. People either love him or hate him. They're never really lukewarm. But I think the guy is really charismatic. And one of the things I learned one thing he said that's really cool was, a loss can destroy a fighter, but a win can also destroy a fighter. Yeah. And George St. Pierre, in his book Way of the Fight, talked about his loss to Matt Serra. So he was a big so Serra was an underdog to GSP in that fight, And GSP totally didn't respect him. Came in there, thought he would just destroy him, and he got knocked. And GSP got knocked out. And he learned that lesson. That one of the lessons from one way to interpret that the wind can destroy you is that you get lazy and complacent, and you stop pushing it. And then so that's the superficial way, and that's true. But at a deeper level, here's the other problem. The reason why a win would destroy you is if that was your outcome. So if you were completely focused on just this one fight, win or lose, let's say you win it. Actually, if you lose it, then that's all right, because then you'll be focused on the rematch. But let's say you win that fight. Well, what's next? And now you're lost. You're aimless. Now you just have to put another fight in there. And
GSP talks about that. He's the problem with being a champion is
there's
no end. There's always another contender. Always someone coming to knock you off. And you're already a champion. There's no more upside, right? And then I think he seven title defenses in a row, and he just he lost interest, right? He was like, again, we're going to do this forever.
Yeah, it never ends. Yeah. And if you don't visualize the process, so GSP loves fighting. Even when he retired, he was in the gym every day. He just loved the process of it. And you can see these champions, even when they retire, they don't quit fighting. They don't quit going to some of them do, and they get fat and out of shape and stuff. And that those guys were driven by something else, significance or whatever it was. But these other guys like McGregor, we think McGregor would be like that. I still see him in the gym, even though he fights once a year or something. But GSP, pretty much was done, and he kept going. And one of the things is, if you focus too much on a short-term or medium-term goal, instead of seeing beyond it, even if you were to get that goal, your life would pretty much be over. So one thing that I do want to say, though, that is important to visualize is actually getting the goal. Because that should be out of the 10 steps that you're going to visualize, that would be step 10. So that's not 100% of your visualization. It would be 10% of your visualization, because you need to feel like you're comfortable there with the belt strapped around your waist, with your arms being lifted, with the whatever the announcer saying, and the new, and still, that's something that you should practice, because you have to mentally get comfortable with thinking of yourself as the winner. And that's the last step. A lot of people who croak right at the end because they didn't lock that in, being comfortable with winning that. And one thing that Tony Robbins says in his visualizations that he leads you through is your identity. Who are you now? You're the type of person who wins, or whatever it is that your goal is. You have to see yourself as somebody who could do that. And not somebody who gets 90% of the way and then it's oh, this isn't me though. This isn't me. And then you croak. Or you choke,
So two emotions that I personally find very powerful, that to me define what is a good visualization or affirmation, is pride and gratitude. And a lot of people use pride in a very negative sense, right? There's a kind of pride,
like arrogance.
Like arrogance. But there's also a kind of pride that comes from being, from actually having accomplished something, right? If you have genuinely climbed step by step up Everest with no Sherpas and no oxygen, in your boxer shorts, if you're Wim Hof, I think that's something to be proud of. And if you're not proud after you've achieved the goal, then the question is, maybe it was luck. Maybe it wasn't really you. That's a problem with Powerball winners, right? They're I'm not proud of being a Powerball and doing it, right? But if you've done something really hard, you can't help but be proud, right? You've gone through the journey, you fought the fought, and you've accomplished, and you deserve to be proud. And so to me, that's very important, right? Are you actually if you're visualizing that moment, having gone through the journey, having achieved your goal, are you actually proud of yourself for having done it, A, and B, if you have that sense of gratitude, right? You're look, I have done this, I've achieved my goal, and I've got the rewards that come with it, and I say, I'm grateful for having all of those things that come with it. I'm proud of having achieved my goal, and I'm grateful for all the things that I've been given. I'm grateful for the journey, and I'm grateful for the rewards that come with it. And I personally find that a very powerful way of doing visualizations and affirmations. When I think about in 12 months' time, and I go, I'm proud, excited, and grateful that I have achieved this, that I've gone through this journey, I've achieved this thing, and I am so thankful for everything that it's brought me, the way I've grown as a person, the way, and all the gifts that come with it. And to me, that is, again, subtle distinction, but that is everything.
Yeah. Pride and gratitude. And proud is like a satisfaction with what you've done. Yeah.
And that's the kind of thing no one can ever take away, right?
Yeah.
That's what I mean by, the person you grow into, right? By climbing the mountain. That is a value no one can ever take. It's not like money or status or significance. That is something that you'll have forever.
Yeah. Right? Very good. Great way to end it. Thanks for listening again.
Yep.
And how do they get in touch with you?
You can find me on my personal website at henrychong.com. That's HenryChong.com. Write a newsletter every Sunday. You can find that on my website, or you can find it at fusang.co/newsletter. That's FUSANG.co/newsletter.
Yes. You can find me at davidtianphd.com. And more about the podcast at davidtianphd.com/DTPHD Podcast. We have a private Facebook group that you can join. So that's the best way to get in touch with us and interact with us. So join the private Facebook group. Until next time, thank you very much for listening. Over and out. Thank you very much, Henry.
Thank you.
All right. Hey, it's David again. Before you go, a couple last things. First, all the show notes and links to resources can be found at davidtianphd.com/DTPHD Podcast. Or you can just go to davidtianphd.com and find it through the top navigation menu. Second, if you'd like to interact with me or other like-minded fans of the podcast, then join our private DTPHD Podcast Facebook group. We've got an awesome community of intelligent, wise individuals from literally all around the world. You can send a join request to the group using the link you'll find in the show notes of every podcast at davidtianphd.com/DTPHD Podcast. Click the link, log into your Facebook, and then click to join. We approve join requests every day. So go to davidtianphd.com and click the link to join. See you inside our group.